My curiosity about mythology brought me here. How do we understand myths, and what myths are we being fed? My hypothesis? Myths are stories which communicate our human condition, illustrated by our joys, concerns, fears, oppressions, and a host of other felt emotions and realities that guide the way in which we live. In order to transform these myths, we must make new ones. As I explored this concept, my peers would push back. Why do we need new myths? And how do we honor the old? I investigated the ways in which stories are told, orally, performative as spoken word, documentaries, and even Disney films. Each had a specific audience and was created for a timely purpose. But in real time, my time, took on a different meaning in my context. I realized that when stories are old, flat, and oppressive, the witness can breathe new meaning into the text. We can create space to give grace, when applicable, to the old meaning and embrace the new. We must honor the context in which the story once served and glean from the lessons learned. Here, my understanding of myths is evolving. There is no scarcity. There is no shortage. No lack of love, of compassion, of joy in the world. There is enough. There is more than enough. Only fear and greed make us think otherwise. We must resist the myth of scarcity. These myths are carried collectively in our subconscious, creating cosmologies that are observed from generation to generation, becoming the tools that can empower or imprison. Imprisonment occurs through westernized myths that are related to false notions of unlimited progress, through environmental abuse, racism, sexism, and classism as interlocking forms of oppression and evil. These myths are living as they require our active participation. They are also co-opted, almost unavoidably framing what our future will hold. Conditioned to take these myths as truth, they are often unchallenged and fragmented. No one need starve. There is enough land and food. No one need die of thirst. There is enough water. No one need die without mercy. There is no end to grace. Sadly, we are now facing the consequences of these westernized myths. Through a growing detachment between land and human, and ecological amnesia. More specifically, this is an inability to connect to the land because of physical location and existential disposition. Forgetting how to sustain life-giving relationships with Earth has further disrupted our ability to thrive. Disenfranchised groups, particularly indigenous peoples, African Americans, and women of color, are increasingly affected. In light of this ecological amnesia, listening and cultivating creative responses to these subalterns can serve as a channel to remembrance of our responsibility to Earth and each other. We are all instruments of grace. The more we give it, the more we share it, the more God makes. There is no scarcity. There is plenty and always more. Women who are often the midwives to new generations, storytellers of oral faith traditions, and whose children become the curators of our culture, have a specific role in the sustainable practice. However, they are often hindered by what could be their shared concern for their suffering Divine Mother, recognizing that her suffering is also our suffering. This acknowledgement is crucial to the grieving that must occur for our healing. We can heal through this disconnection through our creativity, providing space to create beauty from the ugliness of suffering and loss. Although we are motivated by grief, our acknowledgement of the beauty of Mother Earth and our community of people of color will bring about a personal and global revolution of grief and praise. It is our magic. Our magic resides in our praise, the beauty of art that arises from the capacity to grieve. Retelling myths with language that signifies the Divine Mother can dismantle imperialistic framework and create life-affirming narratives across boundaries, gender, race, religion, and ethnicity. It is through this lens that I would journey into the life of a woman who connects to Mother Earth as center in the creation of a new myth, acknowledging her grief and redefining her location as a woman of color. We require stories because they speak directly to our need for meaning, a need as great as our need for food, water, or air. Mythology does not merely explain or describe our place in the cosmos, it invites us to participate in it. So here's the sticky part. I spoke to myths, empowering or imprisoning. Imprisonment occurs through myths of scarcity. Applying the term imprisonment to myths or stories reminds me that our stories can take us to a dark place. In ecofeminism, the undarkened experience counters oppressive narratives that separate and instead reestablishes our sense of interconnectedness with all things, phenomenal and spiritual, the totality of life in our cosmos. I like that. I can undarken spaces and fill in the gap and shed light on the things that we or our oppressors may not often see. Our dark spaces do not have to be framed as sad or oppressive. If framed or placed in the right context, they actually exist to give life, to give light on the things that aren't often seen. We must shed light on the invisible. Our stories should be heard, not just in private, our own communities, or even counterpublic, but public. I believe that the ecofeminist perspective is helpful in this way. It is the coloring of our white spaces, the spaces that highlight the status quo and are purposely not inclusive. We can color the white spaces. We can endarken them with our truth. This myth is about my dear friend Geraldine and her husband Mindahi. I am taking her story and I am transforming it into an eco-narrative as a myth. I invite you to come with me as I journey through her story, which is loosely mapped out as Beauty and the Beast. An egg crack. Its yolk spread creating a drizzle pattern which transformed after the sun baked and solidified its edges. Mother Hen was birthing the most beautiful of creations, life that birthed more life still. The creepy crawlies, the winged, and the two-legged creatures were cultivated in her womb. In turn, her life-giving fruits provided all that every creature would need for survival. Together, the divine and the creatures of the sea, land, and sky formed a partnership built on trust and interdependence. However, humans soon forgot their covenant with Mother Hen. Their backs turned on one another as well. Spilled bloods from bouts of war was ingested by her. Her screams of agony went unnoticed. At war with each other, equal opportunity became a quest for ownership. There are untold stories of men who traveled to the mountains of Mesopotamia and took over already inhabited land. Life sources, rivers teeming with fish, lush green grasslands and canyons encrusted with minerals became resources to acquire wealth. The Atami peoples who maintained their connection to Mother Hen were overtaken. They were keepers of sacred knowledge. Greediness of their attackers not only took their land, but also placed a curse on their peoples. Their stories were shut out, and they were labeled as beasts. Not as peoples of Mesoamerica, the scientists, musicians, poets, peaceful beings. Innovatively cultivating the calendars Aztecs would later translate, they became a peoples forgotten in an effaced land. Mother Hen groaned in disappointment. Painted as beasts, they lived under a curse as untouchable. Mother Hen planted seeds to replace the life which was stolen. Through her relationship with those who remembered her, reminders of what was, still existed. It was Belle who would be the one to restore. A girl named Belle played on the coast of the ocean. Her eyes twinkled as the warmth of sister sun soaked into her skin. She exhaled, allowing brother wind to tickle her feet. These were the moments she would remember, laying in the sand, dreaming and talking to the world around her. Belle was not always easily understood. At a young age, she had unlocked ancient knowledge, a native Chilean cosmovision that all beings are connected. She had formed a relationship. Mother Hen gave, Belle received, and in turn gave back to Mother Hen to restore. This was her covenant, to always give back in gratitude for this great gift of life. Belle was also fond of science. She would devour books, becoming quite the researcher. Now a young woman, she studied ethnoecology and cultural astronomy, bringing in factors that were never once before considered in the standard framework. Belle was a woman in a field which drew a sea of men who threatened to drown her knowledge and the promise which she held from her beloved Mother Hen. What truly made her task difficult was the lack of recognition and validity of her work. She unearthed secrets that were meant to stay hidden. She encountered the beast in a Mexiquetl cave and a minor reference in a history book. Dark woolly hair with silly obscure mannerisms were words to describe the beast. Belle could read between the lines and witness splendor in his community of love and creativity. She felt moved to retell his story, the real story. But Belle was warned that her research would be fruitless. The word is not only the word, something is behind it. If you are thinking or you are seeking, you will find it. The word is not only the word. Critical theorist Jigachi Spivak understands that when we speak about the subaltern in dominant historical archives, what is important is what it does not say. Using this framework, Spivak speaks against intellectual colonialism and points to underlining subliminal messaging of imperialistic texts. Often, language is a place of struggle, just as Belle encountered texts that tainted the peoples of Mesoamerica. American author, feminist, and social activist, a more famous Belle, Bell Hooks, would add that our character Belle's location as a woman on the peripheral in gender, ethics, ethnicity is also a place of struggle. Our story ends with Belle fighting to create space that reclaims the past and heals legacies of pain in ways that will transform. The old flat documentary must be reconstructed to move us into a different mode of articulation. Our struggle is also a struggle against forgetting. We must create spaces for remembrance. But is it possible for someone who speaks from the margins? Bell Hook recognizes that she speaks from the margins, separate from the whole and on the outside of the main body. She can enter the whole, but she cannot live there. She has an assigned place. Relating to the storytellers, shamans, and griots who are also located on the edges, Hooks considers it a calling to be on the peripheral as a responsibility to analyze from her unique position. It is similar to what Cornel West calls prophetic witness. Hooks does not believe that women need to move to the center, but become nourished on the margins to empower the capacity to resist, creating alternative new worlds. She admits that being in the margins is also a site of repression and resistance, but is silenced when speaking to the resistance. In what ways can we transform a space that is meant to keep our lives, our journeys, and our voices separate? In many ways, Mother Earth also speaks from the margins. She is resistant to dominance and is no longer silent. However, her needs and the needs of women in marginalized communities should not be considered the other, which is also a mass of oppressive talk that hides the gaps, absences, and spaces where words should be spoken. The words are there if we listen and use counter language in our speech, retelling our own stories and not letting anyone speak on our behalf. To be clear, this is not an attempt to create a broad brushstroke, as every journey differs. Not every woman feels this connection with Mother Earth and may separate nature and human. This point of tension is noted in Genesis, where God blesses male and female, declaring, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it." Interpreted in this way, nature and human are separated into hierarchical entities, opening the gates for dominance and governance of intellectual property rights. Retelling stories, our narratives of interconnectedness, hold the power to break this mold. Women of color, who are also on the margins, can reclaim their position in society and align with Mother Earth through the sharing of their experiences. In creating new myths, we are reprogramming, carrying new stories in the collective unconscious. In turn, new ideas are generated regarding who we are and where we stand in relation to Mother Earth. So what is the purpose of cultivating ecological wisdom in a postmodern world? Universally, there's following an agreement. There's something wrong. Villages are flooded, land has eroded, deforestation is on the rise, and nuclear plants continue to pollute our water. The promise to improve polity and fine-tune this broken system will continue to compromise our very existence. The papal encyclical Laudato Si created a framework of how to care for our home, Mother Earth. Written for Catholics and people of other faith traditions or constructs, Pope Francis made the world aware of Mother Earth's ongoing crisis. Quote, "This sister now cries out to us because of the harm we have inflicted on her by our irresponsible use and abuse of the goods with which God has endowed her. We have come to see ourselves as her lords and masters, entitled to plunder her at will. The violence present in our hearts, wounded by sin, is also reflected in the symptoms of sickness evident in the soil, in the water, in the air, and all forms of life. We have forgotten that we ourselves are the dust of the earth." End quote. An excerpt from the recent Islamic Declaration on Climate Change states, quote, "Our species, though selected to be caretaker or steward on the earth, has been the cause of such corruption and devastation on it that we are in danger of ending life as we know it. This current rate of climate change cannot be sustained, and the Earth's fine equilibrium may soon be lost. The same fossil fuels that helped us achieve most of the prosperity we see today are the main cause of climate change. What will future generations say of us who leave them a degraded planet as our legacy?" End quote. Moving towards wholeness, then, requires an ecological and counter-hegemonic lens to address this growing disconnection. The same oppressors that silence the human subaltern also silence the ecological subaltern. The city intervenes on land daily, planting, building, unearthing, pumping, draining, dumping, disrupting, and defacing. Payment as retribution and ceremonial ritual is rarely, if ever, considered. Our women are being silenced, ignored, raped, enslaved, kidnapped, dominated, dumped on, neglected, and are not always seen as the leaders of our society. If we are nature, speaking of nature, to nature, it is important to recognize that our interconnectedness through everyday interactions is a constant dialogue with nature, human, and the divine. Therefore, humans are not separated from, dominant, or inherently titled most valuable players. Furthermore, the way in which nature dialogues with nature creates an atmosphere for oneness, working in union to live life fully. Today I told a myth, just one myth, as an individual. However, the myth-making process is participatory, collective, and pluralistic. Each of us contributes our perceptions and beliefs, and there is no definitive translation. It is up to us to carry new stories with the truths we now understand. Mother Earth is not a commodity. She gives us life. Her peoples are not resources. Her women are among the great leaders, and we must engage in the retelling of these stories as our ritual and responsibility to Mother Earth.